Are we good then? Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you so much for waiting. Apparently, we have a lot of people stuck downstairs because the elevators start running at 6 o'clock. So if you're here early, then you're good, but other people are struggling a little bit. My name is Ellen Sorensen. I am a 1981 graduate from actually the Intercollege program. My degree is in computer science and music education. Kind of an odd combo, but it works for me. I am on the board of the CSE Alumni Association. So on behalf of the Alumni Association, I want to welcome you to tonight's program. And I want to thank you for signing up to mentor our students because it's so important to our students to have that support. Yeah, I think we can just get started then. I'm going to moderate tonight, so I'm going to try to keep these guys on track and try to get you guys to be somewhat engaged. And we'll just start by introducing everyone. So this is Alyssa. I'm going to read because I didn't remember to memorize everybody's bio. Alyssa is a 2014 biomedical engineering graduate. She was involved in SWE, BMES, and intramural sports during her collegiate career. Since graduating, she's worked for Vascular Solutions Teleflex as a manufacturing engineer and at Resolution Medical as a process development engineer. This is her 4th year as a CSE mentor, and she also helps facilitate the program as another member of the alumni board. Dan Van Lith is a 2007 aerospace engineering graduate and has a master's in manufacturing systems from the University of St. Thomas. Dan started working at Chart Inc. after graduation as a manufacturing engineer and moved into project engineer role in 2011. Dan was a mentee in his junior and senior years and has mentored for both the University of Minnesota and St. Thomas since 2008. He has a total of 23 mentees over the years, some years mentoring as many as 3 students. So if you have questions about multiple students, you can talk to Dan after the program. Kent Howe, down in the end, earned a master's in electrical engineering from the university in 1991. He started his career as an R&D engineer at several small medical companies and is now an engineering team lead at Boston Scientific. This is his 9th year as a mentor in the CSE program. And finally, Colleen Guest earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering in 1984 and an MBA from Carlson School of Management in 88. She's worked for Honeywell her entire career. Her focus at Honeywell has been factory operations, integrated supply chain. She currently works with development teams to launch new building controllers into the factory. This is her 7th year as a CSE Mentor Program. And I think we'd like to start maybe by, since Alyssa has the microphone and she's right here, asking each of our panelists, what attracted you to become a mentor? Alyssa?
So for me, I actually didn't join until after I had become a member of the CSE Alumni Association board. And like she had mentioned, we help facilitate this program. So it was just an opportunity for me to help give back and to get integrated also into that board. So that's why I started mentoring.
Dan?
Yeah, no, to me, as Ellen mentioned, I participated in the mentor program as a mentee, both my junior and senior year, and I thought it was very valuable. And so I thought it was something that I could give back once I actually graduated. I didn't know what I had to offer, but I figured that if nothing else, I was able to help with class selection or just being someone to talk to that had actually graduated and got a job.
I was asked by somebody from the Alumni Association a number of times if I would consider being a mentor, and I had dropped another volunteer opportunity I'd been very active in, and so I had a little bit of extra free time, and so decided to give back to the university.
And I'm Kent Howe. I was involved with recruiting on campus here, and a student asked me if our company did tours, and gave that student and a few of her friends a tour, and really enjoyed talking to the students about their interests and answering their questions. I remembered all the help I got during my job search and decided that it'd be good to give back and to help some of the students with their job search and other questions they might have as they're pursuing a career.
So there are probably similar reasons to why you all got involved. I have a list of prepared questions that we're going to ask, and then we'll move on to any that you might have specifically. Starting over with Kent, what are some common mistakes you've seen students make in mentoring a relationship? And have you used any of those mistakes to teach other mentors or mentees?
So one of the things I've seen is that sometimes the students just want answers. They'd love for us to give them the guidance that will tell them this is exactly what you want to do. And what I've done is listen to what their real question is, try to find out what the intent is, and then provide them with the information to help them make a decision. And sometimes be pretty open about it and saying, you know, this is what you're asking. I can't answer your question, or I won't answer your question. I will help you make a decision. And so then you can draw more questions and information from the student by having more of a dialogue and helping them answer their own question.
One of the things I've seen is sometimes students come in and they're not really clear on what kind of help or guidance they're looking for. Is it networking, communication? Is it class selection? Is it job interview techniques? What is it that they're really looking for? So I've always been really open with my students. You know, you can ask me just about anything and I'll answer it. If I've got an example from my career, I will point you in that direction. I'm kind of like Kent. I don't give them anything prescribed. They have to come and ask those questions, and then I'll do my best to answer them for them.
I would say for me, I'd say I've run into a lot of scheduling difficulty. It's like, oh, you meet with your mentee, all is going good, and then it's like, okay, or it's like, would we like to meet again? And both parties say, yes, we'd like to do that. And then the question becomes, okay, well, when would you like to do that? And it's like, okay, well, as a student, it's like, oh, you're not out on your own. You're trying to figure out your own schedule, figure out your own life, how to do it, and you're managing class. You might be working. You might try to have a social life as well. And you just go through and it's like, oh, this ominous is like, okay, well, everyone agrees like tomorrow, that's too soon. And like 3 months out is too far away, but where do you go? And it's like, as a new student, especially if they've not had too many years under their belt, you don't know. It's like, oh, am I going to have a test? Am I going to have a project? It's like, what's going to happen? And so there's been kind of apprehension to, it's like, okay, well, do we want to do next? And it's like 2 Tuesdays from now. It's like, does that sound good? 6 o'clock. And there's just some apprehension. And I think there's also the students dealing with an adult who it's like, oh, they try to respect. And I've always had many students that are very respectful, and they feel like it's like, oh, it'd be a travesty if they have to tell me that, oh, all of a sudden something comes up. And so I just try to reaffirm to them that it's like, hey, it's like, if something comes up, it's like, we can touch base again in a week or two and make sure that it's like, hey, it's like, is it still looking good? It's like, even up to the same day, it's like, are we still good to meet? And it's like, oh, if it falls through, that's fine. But it's like just kind of keeping the open communication, and it's better to kind of set in stone something now. Well, not necessarily in stone, but put something on the calendar now and then come back to it later and just check in then.
So for me, something that I've experienced is the past couple times I've had students who are maybe juniors to seniors, they're looking for internships and positions. So they're trying to explore what different options they have once they graduate. So obviously the easiest thing for me is like, here's what I do. Here's other roles that I've seen. And it might come to a point where they find, yeah, like, I don't really like what you do, which is great. And a mistake that I've seen is that they kind of may shut down and just, okay, I don't see that this is as valuable as I expected. And for me, just trying to turn that into a teaching opportunity is, it's okay. You've learned something, even if it's something you don't want, that's still valuable information. There's other ways we can explore. That's just a new avenue for us to find things that you do like. And I know when I graduated, when I was looking for a job, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do either. So really just trying to help them stay engaged and realize that even if we don't have the exact job that they're looking for, or we don't have that exact experience that they're looking for, that we can still provide a lot of other learning opportunities for them. Maybe if it's not even from just a specific job position or avenue, there's all kinds of professional type of interactions that we can speak to and help them understand as well. So that's something that I've encountered.
I love that answer, because that's one of the things that I've always said to students too when we start the program. Learning what you don't want to do is sometimes as useful as learning what you really do want to do. And to reinforce that we have other things that we can offer them besides just what my job is. All right, so how do you manage your own expectations as a mentor?
So for me, I am definitely the youngest. I'm a baby here. Sorry. So I really just try to frame my perspective that, I wasn't a student that long ago. At least I like to think so. So for me, I'm really just trying to really relate to how they're feeling, what they're going through. I remember how busy everything was for them. So I try to kind of gauge my own expectations accordingly. In the professional environment, we might expect emails or things to be responded to really quickly. And just being really clear and upfront with your student, and understanding that they have things going on. So they're probably a little more busy during finals week kind of a thing. So I just try to really be as open to what they're feeling and going through as I can. And ultimately as a mentor, I am getting something out of this too. But really I'm setting my expectations to help them and for them to get whatever they need out of it. So I'm pretty open with my student, and this is for you. I'm happy to help in whatever way you need me to. And I think that's been pretty positive, and I've had very different experiences with each of my students, and hopefully in a way that's been catered to each of them. So I think really just kind of being able to see from their perspective what they are looking for, and kind of being open to that, because it's definitely different from a professional connection, I would say, just because they're still in school.
Yeah, I'd say right or wrong, I set my expectations really low. It's like, they said, it's like, I have 23 listed people that I was supposed to mentor, and I would say that probably a third of them I saw once or less. And so to me, it's like my expectation is to be there for the student if the student chooses to engage. And so it's like, it's like trying to get, as Alyssa says, like, what student is the one leading the relationships? Like, what does the student need out of this? It's like my expectation is the student shows up at the kickoff meeting if they say they're going to. And at that point, it's like, anything after that is kind of bonus. I know that the St. Thomas, they did something called Take a Tommy to Lunch. And that was a lunchtime date with a mentee mentor. And it's like, I thought that worked out really well too. It's like the U of M tries to foster this relationship that lasts year long. And that's awesome if you can get that. But I appreciate the fact that St. Thomas said, okay, it's like the idea of committing to this relationship that lasts the whole year while doing everything else. It's like, what kind of scared some students. And so it's like, if I was there, it's like we could engage and just kind of emphasize to the student, hey, it's like, what would you like to get? I'm here. And it's like, if there's one or two things that I happen to say that made a difference in what they wanted, it's like, that's what my goal was. That was my expectation. I didn't set an expectation on what I wanted to do for the student. I just want the student to feel that they got something out of it.
I'm kind of with Dan when we talked about this. I said, well, I just set my expectations low, because the first year I was disappointed. I thought I would get there would be a better relationship. And then I had to reevaluate that. But I have a great story. This was like my 5th year of mentoring, and I had a young woman that I just didn't feel like I was giving her what she needed. But she kept setting up appointments every 2 weeks, and we met every 2 weeks. And she had almost no family support. And so I thought it was really important that she had an adult that she could talk to. And that if that was all I was for her, that was okay. Then that was a win. And about 15 months after our our relationship ended, I got a LinkedIn message from her, and I wrote it down because it meant so much to me. And it said, I don't know if I would have stuck it out if it weren't for the meetings with you. And that made my day. And every time I read it, I think about that, because I was being what she needed, even though I didn't realize it at that point of time.
So for me, it really ties into the first question. A lot of times the students want answers, and I would love to just provide answers, and I've got strong biases and opinions in several areas. And for me, it's really important to find out, what does the student want? Why did they sign up for the mentor program? What are they looking for from me? And then work with them in that area. And also understand their life, understand their schedule, what else are they involved in, how much time are they going to be able to commit to it. My student last year, the way her program was set up, it seemed like she had midterms every week the entire semester. And so I knew that, like, if we met, it'd be a very brief meeting sometimes. We'd set up a meeting, and sometimes we'd have to adjust that. But understanding what their schedule is and how busy they are really helped me understand, so that I'm meeting their needs, and I'm not trying to just go and provide information and answers when I believe it's appropriate.
I think that's true with a lot of us. We're engineers, and we want to provide the answers, and we want to construct the thing that's going to be, save the world. And that's not what this program is about. So those are good answers. Is there one thing that you try to do at that first meeting, or at any particular time in your mentor relationship?
So I already explained what I like to do at the first meeting. That's understanding their expectations. One of the things I like to do, this is somewhat pushing my agenda, but it also helps with some of the other areas people are talking about, is I like to have the student come to my work and get a tour of the company, have them bring a few friends. So it helps them, instead of just a one-on-one, gives them an opportunity to have multiple people asking questions. They don't have to feel like they have to spend an hour asking questions. It's a little easier when you have some friends asking as well, and that builds off of each other. And then I can show them multiple things that engineers do within our company, and not just what I do. They can understand a little bit more about the different opportunities and how they could fit in at a company like mine. And one of the things I can point out is that pretty much anything you would want to do, I work at a bigger company, anything you'd want to do, you could do at a bigger company. And then I also have experience at a smaller company. So then the parallels, at a smaller company, you're going to do all these things. You will be the one person that does all of these things. And I'm able to provide that information to help them soak up the information and figure out a little bit more towards what they might want to do.
One of the things I like to talk to the students about is failure. Okay, when did I fail? I give them an example of a class I failed in college, and telling my mother that I had failed this class, and she was so disappointed. And I remember telling her, but Mom, 60% of the class failed. I had really good company with me. And I didn't laugh when I told that to my mother. I'm sure it was in tears. But a lot of these kids come here to school, they're excellent students, and they haven't experienced failure. And they need to know that they're going to fail at school, they're going to fail in the workplace, and maybe, maybe it's not failure, but the project didn't work out the way they planned or on the time schedule. But they need to know that there's a lot to be learned by going through that. And it's more how you come out the other side and how you adapt and change to those hardships that are going to be part of your career. And so I like to walk them through that and show them, both from my professional career too, when projects have gone really good or when they haven't gone so good, what were the things that we had to adapt and change by. Because I think that's, especially, it's not so good if you've got a senior, but if you've got somebody that's in undergraduate, they really haven't probably had those experiences quite so much.
And just like Ken, I do like to offer, it's like, a tour of my workplace right away when the first thing say, it's like, oh, this is a unique opportunity that you have. I like the idea of saying, oh, bring some friends along too. I've not done that. But in addition to the tour, it's like one thing that I like to get in the student's mind is just saying, it's like, oh, what do you plan to do next summer? It's like, oh, some students that, like you said, are the lower division ones. It's like, oh, they might not be looking to get a full-time job, but it's like, oh, are you guys considering a co-op? Are you doing some sort of internship? After participating in several career fairs for my job, it's like the one thing that I feel that sets a lot of students apart is job experience. And so just getting them thinking about, it's like, okay, do they want to do a co-op? Do they want to commit 2 or 3 semesters of their time to actually work at a company? Are they able to find an internship? And one thing too is like I don't offer an internship at our company and guarantee that they get one just because they're my mentee, but it's just saying, oh, you should really consider looking at this, and then also encourage the U does their year ops or undergraduate research opportunities. It's like, oh, some students choose to go to grad school, some students, like I said, enter the workforce, but you still get those letters of recommendation from faculty that you see here, and it's just an opportunity that it's like, okay, if we by chance don't happen to meet again, it's like I'd like to just instill that. It's like, hey, that's something that really you guys should look into.
For me, I really like to figure out what their goals are. And I know we make the mentorship agreement pretty early on. So this year I got smarter and I took a photo of it. So now I could be like looking at it, making sure we're always, looking back at that. But definitely I try to give as much background on myself early on, just so that they know, I have a short little bio that they looked for when they first picked me, but just so they know this is kind of what my experience is, and maybe it'll spark some other topics that they're interested in, things that they've been thinking about. My mentee this year, she's a BME student as well, just like me. So she's been asking me a lot about classes. So I can talk to them about, what they're going through early on, and just kind of getting in a feel for what they're interested in getting out of this relationship early on. But yeah, mostly I'm just trying to get to know them right away and then let them know who I am, what I'm about, and here are some things that I can offer them.
So kind of an aside on those mentorship agreements that you go through with your students, and we ask you to turn them in. It's not because we want to track what you're doing. We really don't care about that. We want to know that you met with the student. The agreements and what you actually put in those agreements, that's for you and the student. It's for you to do like Alyssa and look back and say, did we meet our goals? Are we doing what you wanted to? Do we need to adjust them? So as you try to fill those out, just keep that in mind. We want you to turn them in, but we just want to know you met with your student, you talked, you know who they are, you kind of have an idea what you might want to do. The rest of it, it's really for you. All right, the last prepared question, so you guys can start thinking about what kind of questions you might have that we didn't prepare. What are some of the more common stumbling blocks that pairs face, and how do you overcome them?
I think for me, I find that winter break is really challenging. And I'm excited to be, celebrating the holidays too, but it's easy to not get in the swing of things again come the new semester. And it's challenging when students are back home, they're off campus. So I think to overcome that, it's really a great practice if you can just have something in the calendar ahead of time and just have a plan before you go on break, and just make sure you've touched base. Maybe the next one can be a phone call instead of in person. I found that's helpful sometimes. But I think really just getting ahead of it and being prepared is helpful, because everyone's excited to be off with your families, not thinking about all the things that we have going on here. So that's definitely something that I've struggled with.
I'm going to piggyback on the same topic too. I labeled it falling out of touch, but depending on when the mentor year started, and it, like you said, it's like, oh, you meet the first time and people are like, okay, we can give ourselves 2-3 weeks. Well, 2-3 weeks later might be Thanksgiving, and then you got finals, and then you got Christmas break. And then I personally feel, again, it's like, oh, a lot of times this is the first time that this student is dealing with an adult that's not their parents. I think a lot of them feel shy, or they don't want to shoot a message saying, it's like, oh yeah, I know we kind of promised to do something every month or whatever. It's been 3 months, or it's like, do they even remember me? And And so it's like, it's like, oh, I try to prod them occasionally nicely, just kind of like, oh, how are things going? It's like I said, whether that's a text or an email, and just trying to stay on top and understand and just say, it's like, hey, it's like, if you're busy, completely understand, because a lot of times it's like, oh, various classes have projects and tests and everything else, but it really is kind of the regular consistent meetings, I think really help foster the relationships. My best mentor experiences have been with students that I've met on a regular basis. And it's like it's like, oh, like I said, you overcame, it's like you met 2-3 times before Christmas break, and you can't help where your student is from, but some students see winter break, it's like they're off for 2-3 weeks. If they happen to be local in the metro, it's like that's a nice time where they don't have homework, they don't have tests. It's like, and they might have access to a car that they didn't before. So it might be a nice opportunity for your workplace tour, or just to kind of change things up.
Yeah, I think initially scheduling is always the biggest impasse you have till you get, do they have a car? Can they do this? What days are good? You can work those all out. You figure that out. The only other one I've had, and now I'm much more clear on when they're looking for me, is my first mentor thought I could help them get a job. And I said, I'm not a hiring manager, but I know what it takes to get a job, and I can help you through the interview process. I have a set of tools. I have a bag of tricks we can work with you on, but I can't hire you. So just setting that expectation right off the bat.
For me, being a very talkative person, the awkward silence at one of the meetings, that could be a stumbling block, where you've covered the question pretty quickly and there's a lot more you can discuss and take advantage of the time. So just getting into a more conversational mode and understanding other things, other interests they have. And one of the things that helps me is I've interviewed students, so I start asking questions that would possibly be things they'd be getting in the interview to break the ice, and kind of teach them about how to respond to questions and make it more interactive. And then you get to know the student a little bit more and you develop a better relationship. So instead of just being this adult that is meeting with a student, you become a mentor or more of a coach, and you establish more of a partnership.
Does anybody have any questions that you want the panel to answer?
So, some of you have talked about having multiple students. So right now I've got 3 students, and they've all got a little bit different ideas of what they want to do in different backgrounds. So basically different needs, but a couple of them are kind of going in the same direction. And so what would be the feeling of maybe having both of those students, say, come along on a site visit someplace? I'm a civil engineer, or was a civil engineer, just retired. So projects, building project, or visit with the architect, engineer, or visit with the owner, that sort of thing.
Okay, I'm going to try to paraphrase that so that it gets on the recording. The question is on a mentor who has multiple students, and whether those students, if they seem to share interest, could be combined in some sort of an activity, especially like a site visit. Yeah. And we have Dan and Alyssa both had multiple students. So, Kent too. All right.
Okay, I guess I'll start.
Go ahead.
The mic. To me, it's like I've noticed the first couple. I have 2 students this year. The first couple of meetings, I almost think that the students feel that they have to meet together, or they're being inconvenienced to me. And I think that there's definitely some benefit to having both students together at the same time, even if they're different ages or different stages, because the younger student could view the older student as a mentee or a mentor as well. But to me, I also see the benefit of also separating them out so they can each have their own needs met. In my current one, I know that the senior is a little more upfront, has a lot more questions, a little more assertive, and the younger one is the one that's a little meeker and is willing to go along, is interested, but had that older one not been there, you want to have that same experience. And so for job site visits, stuff like that, I don't see any reason why you couldn't take 2 of them, or it's like each student has their own needs. And so I don't see it being a problem that like, oh, doing some group activities, some individual activities.
I've actually had one at a time, so I'm going to defer.
Me too.
I just asked the student. So I told them I like to do tour, and I asked the students, I said, would you like to come with the other mentee or with some friends, or how would you like to do it? And the one, she just wanted to meet individually because she felt then she could ask the questions that she wanted and get more out of the meeting, understanding her goals and her interests. And so it would have been fine either way. I just left it up to the student to see what that student wanted.
Anybody else?
Did any of you ever had moments where you felt unqualified? How you got past that?
The question is, have you ever felt unqualified, and how do you get past that? That's a good question.
So yes, definitely. Especially because I'm a very young mentor. That was part of the reason I not really considered it early on. I was like, I just graduated basically, and I was like, no. I don't know anything about the professional world yet. But what I found now, and I've been doing it this is my 4th year. So what I found is you may not know the exact thing they're wondering about. You may not be in that job that they want, but you have so much to offer that they may not know. You also have professional experience in general. You know how to construct an email, like you know how to talk, you've done interviews, you've gotten a job, like those are all very valuable things, and it may not be like job specific. And then even as a younger mentor too, I also felt that I can still relate to, so I still had some of the professors that they are having still. I can comment on some of the classes that I recommend they take, some things that I found were more useful than other things. So I just think you just need to kind of pivot from whatever you feel you're maybe a little bit inadequate in. And there are so many things that you can offer. And also like there are lots of resources. Maybe that's something that you could look into, like, oh shoot, I don't know that. I could learn that though. Like I know how to solve a problem. So maybe that's an opportunity for you as well, and something that you can get out of this program too. And I also encourage you, if there's something maybe just like student specific that you're questioning, feel free to reach out to Joelle and Andrea. They can be super helpful as well. So if there's something like where's the student center phone number, I don't know, shoot them an email. They'll be happy to help too.
I was going to add just a little bit to what Andrea just said here. Alyssa, sorry. You might not know something that the student needs, but you might know somebody who does. You're in a professional environment and your coworkers know a lot of stuff too. So I would not be afraid to ask your coworkers to help you answer a question, give you more information.
Perfect example this year. I had 2 problems. I thought I was going to be too old. Nobody want to be my mentee. Okay, because they get to choose. and I thought they're going to think they're like their grandparents. So, but they did. Everyone's been very good that way. But like I have a foreign student this year, and I don't know the ins and outs of a person with a green card trying to find a job. But I'm like, but don't worry. I know people in HR. And I'm going to go and ask questions, and we'll figure this out together. Okay, so that's the way to approach it. If you don't know, you just say, okay, I don't know the answer either, but I do have contacts in the business world, and we'll figure this out together. What's the best way to do that?
Just piggyback on what Alyssa said too, it's like I've done it for a number of years. I think it was my 1st or 2nd year. Like I said, it's like, oh, most of the mentees, when they come, it's like, oh, Mr. Van Lith, and then they see me, and it's like, oh, and one kid I think was very offended because I think I was technically younger than him, and it was just one of those things that's like, and he was one that I met the first time and then never heard from again, but didn't take it personally. But he was expecting a more mature person who had been in the industry 20 or 30 years and had all this industry experience. And it's like, oh, depending on where you are in your career, it's like you do have things. It's like, oh, if you're a more recent grad, it's like, professors, you might, classes that you took, you might not go into, it's like, well, what classes did you find more helpful? Some of the students the 2 students I had this time, it's like, oh, how did you transfer from your student life to real life to your adult life. It's like, what did that look like? What did you do? And it's like, just general questions. One person, it's like, oh, as a senior, it's like, oh, explain to me more about benefits. It's like all these companies give me their benefits package and stuff. And it's like, well, like I said, these are questions they could ask their parents too, but it's just adult life is different than student life. And so it's like you did make that transition. And so even though you might not think that you have the career experience, it's like either you know people that you can talk to, or like I said, it's like, oh, there's many things that you've done in life that you just might not realize. The student, you might think that you're not qualified, but you actually are quite qualified compared to the student that you're actually mentoring.
I have a question for you.
Question for me.
Related to third question, do you have an email group for all the mentors that if I have a question that I can pose it to that group?
I'm going to let the question was, do we have an email group for mentors? And I'm pretty sure that the answer is yes, but no, it's not. Oh, no.
All right. Yes, we do not. And that is because we protect your privacy and we don't want to share your contact information with other mentors if you have not let us know that that's okay. We do have a LinkedIn group that you're welcome to join and share questions, advice, and contact people that way. And if you would like a very specific thing, if you would like to connect with a mentor who works at Cargill because your students are interested in that and you don't know anybody, you can always reach out to us and then we can try to facilitate that. But no, we do not just open up contacts for everybody.
You don't have to. There are groups you can send to whatever it's called, and you don't know who's getting it.
And so I'm just going to say that again for the recording. The idea that there are listservs out there where you don't know who you're emailing, you don't have the personal contact information. No, we are not set up for that.
Okay.
That would be the simple answer for that.
But you have LinkedIn.
We do have LinkedIn. And we do have emails that get sent to you. I hope you get those that are from the office, suggesting topics you might want to talk about or activities you might want to try. And if you have any suggestions for any of that, please email Joelle or Andrea, because we're always looking for something else, something more that we can provide for you to make this work better. Yes.
So the young man that I'm mentoring is really struggling academically, and frankly, I'm not sure he's going to make it. And I've tried to coach him on resources he could be tapping into at U, like tutoring or just time management skills, which I think is some of the problem. But curious if any of you have been in that situation and what you guys did.
Okay, so the question is, a mentee is struggling academically, and what kind of resources might be available, and whether we've encountered students in such a similar situation, what we would have done.
That young woman I talked about who sent me the nice email, she had been, she was on academic probation at that point of time. And that was part of her struggle because she'd already reapplied to try to get back in. And they told her she needed to stay on probation for a while longer. So it was kind of disappointing to her, but eventually she got off. And I think I did exactly what you were saying. I talked about the tutoring services, and for her, she had no family support. Her job and making her day-to-day living, one of her goals was not to become too far in debt. And so we talked about, well, maybe you only want to take, this many classes so you can put enough time and attention on your classes and yet still have your job, that balance. And for some of the kids, I think their academics struggle because they can't do the time management, they can't do the balancing act, or they're not very good at it yet. But I know there are a lot of resources, but they have to be willing to reach out and say, I need help. So if he or she is talking to you, that's good. That's at least a start.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, how do you, I don't know, I got a mentee who boy, we went through the SMART goals and there's like so many goals. And I think, gosh, you're gonna be able to get this all done without feeling, well, one, like a failure, or two, too overwhelmed and wanting to step back and all the other stuff going on with their tests and homework and blah, blah, blah. That we talked about. How do you like kind of maybe get them to step back from being too over zealous?
So the student has set SMART goals that to you seem somewhat unachievable or maybe too much, too ambitious. And how would you encourage them to adjust that to something a little more realistic?
I haven't had that same scenario, but basically trying to take on too much, encounter that where the student gets very busy. And I think a lot of it is just understanding what of those goals will be the priority and figure out which one you can help the most with, and maybe what ones are most timely, which ones are most important for them this year versus maybe working on in the future or later in the semester versus right now.
I too have had overly ambitious ones. It's like generally like, oh, hey, we'd like to meet. It's like, oh, one time I had the 3 mentees and they were thinking that each of them could have 1 weekend of it's like, oh, like at 1 day each week. So sorry, 1 this week, 1 next week, 1 the 3rd week, and the 4th week they could all 3 meet because they didn't want to it's like, oh, they thought the group meeting was a good thing too. And it never panned out. And so I kind of let it work naturally out that it's like, oh, I think there's a lot of students, especially at the beginning of the year, that are overly ambitious and they're like, oh, we'd like this, 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 this. And then I think trying to focus and say, it's like, oh, just 1 week or 1 meeting at a time. Just, it's like, oh, what would you like to work on this time? And I think the students kind of realize too. And if I've yet to have a student that's been very driven to get all of them done. But yeah, like you said, it's like, oh, understanding it's like, hey, this is what we want. So it's like you don't run into that silent, and it's like period but between questions or whatever, there's always stuff to talk about. It's a nice board to go back to for that. But to me, I just kind of let it naturally work out and try to emphasize the ones that it's like, oh, are higher priority on their behalf.
So this sounds like my life. So I would recommend prioritization. This is a great opportunity to help teach some of that, I think, first of all. So I agree with Kent on that. Secondly, if maybe once you do some prioritization, if you can start kind of converting some of those into small kind of actionable mini tasks, just to kind of show them like, this is what that'll look like. How do you feel about that? You know, I think maybe kind of starting down that path and showing them like, how can we break these up into more actionable tasks? And then how would you kind of schedule this with all the other stuff you have going on as well? And just really kind of getting them to see that's a lot to do. That's what I would recommend.
Right, I think we have time for one more. We got one more right here.
So as a mentor, we deal with a lot of conflicting opinions. 2 examples that I have is one, someone will critique their resume and I'll look at the resume and then we'll have differing opinions. And then the second example that I have is, you know, their advice from their parents is something different than I would give them. How do you deal with dissenting opinions like that?
That's a really good question. How do you deal with dissenting opinions or differing advice, and someone else is giving advice that conflicts with what you're giving them?
Yeah. So I guess generally that's a good real life lesson too. I think ultimately people are going to always have different opinions, but I think really getting them to kind of do the pros and cons of each one and understand implications of every opinion and ultimately getting them to make their own decision, I think is positive. And yeah, maybe talking through them and helping them kind of critically analyze what kind of those different routes look like might be helpful. Obviously, I think it kind of depends on what the question is or what the situation is, but that's maybe what I'd recommend. Just approach it how you would approach any other big decision where you're looking at the good and bad and kind of making that analysis yourself.
I think that, like, especially on resumes, that's a lose-lose proposition there, okay? You know, I'll tell them I work with a very traditional engineering firm, and this kind of resume would work best if you came to our company. This style might be better if you go here. You know, there's some very bad don'ts, but there's a lot of do's that can work. And they have to be willing, and that's probably their comfort level isn't there. And the other thing about you say something different than your parents say, I'm hoping that that's for them a good learning experience, because we are supposed to be an outside voice. And I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. I want what's best for them. I think about that when I'm talking to these kids too. But if they really want to do something, then that's where they're going to have to forge that new path for themselves. And you might be just the person that they need to say, yeah, I can see you doing that. You know, and it's a little bit, maybe it gives them the comfort level they need to try something different.
And I would say things like the resume, where they could try your solution, try another solution, write it out, and then come back to it a few days later and read it and see what they think. Be able to give them the opportunity to review it, but keeping in mind that there are different perspectives. And as Colleen said, different companies are going to have different perspectives. We tell people to tailor the resume for the company, and they don't necessarily understand what that means. But if they can have a few different approaches and figure out how they like it, what they're most comfortable with, I think that works well.
All right, so wrapping it up, I want to thank our panelists for being here and giving us their good advice. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for, first off, for volunteering to mentor our students, because really we appreciate your time. They appreciate your time, even if you don't think that that's happening right now. They really do. Thank you for coming tonight. There's refreshments outside, and if you have any questions that you'd like